Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Zach Ingo Finch, and I am once again joined by my co-host, Greg Elliott. He went and retrieved his equipment that is vital to this daily podcast that we do. So I am no longer on my lonesome today. Greg has just got home from the match. I stayed in because quite frankly, I wasn't paying £35 for it. Fair play to everyone that did, but I wasn't paying £35 for it. But what I will start with, Greg, is that my score prediction of 2-1 to Liverpool is correct.
Well, hey,
it's the first time that's happened.
Fantastic. Look, we're getting better at this. Yeah. No, look, what can I say, mate? It's cold. I'm cold. I'm wet. It's a Wednesday night. We lost, but for a change, I'm happy.
Yeah, right. It was so weird to watch us enjoy the game. Right, so we'll talk about the game, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the game, and I'm acting like I'm going to try and apply some sort of structure to the banter that me and Greg have. Is kind of it's not what you're here for in a review. But mate, from minute 1 to about minute 10, and then from minute 60 to minute 90, that was a game of football. I feel.
Yeah.
We kicked the ball up. We had shots on target. It didn't feel like... I feel bad because I'm starting to understand. Maybe all of the people, including myself, that had a bit of trust in Russel Martin were wrong.
Right, okay. Here's the thing, right?
I knew that would set you off.
Has getting rid of Russel Martin immediately solved all of our problems?
No.
Was it ever going to? No. Is the pressure that has been relieved from that happening and turned the atmosphere back up at St Mary's, and just there's not, the vibes are different. The pressure the players must have been under, knowing that the manager's job was on the line every game. They played with that gone. They played with freedom. They played in a way that seemed natural to them. And what we've talked about on our long episode on Monday about how it's now sort of a clean slate, because it's impossible to judge how a player plays football naturally compared to how they were playing when they were, I don't want to use the word shackled by the system.
No, you can. So if we're just getting into it, you can, because we shouldn't have to celebrate kicking a ball forward. That is insane. And like
the key difference, right? Like, we kicked the ball long on every goal kick tonight, and was it successful very often? No, not really. We won one. I think I counted 4 that we made something of from the entire game. But when it didn't go well, instead of being on our 12-yard line with our backs to goal and it's being an instant goal, it went out for a throw in their half somewhere, and then we have the opportunity to get the ball and make something of that instead. Like, we're up the pitch, and sometimes, even if it didn't turn into something and it went out of play in their half, sometimes it was our throw-in. So we're getting up the pitch. You know, it's gained yardage.
But that's my point. It's absolutely insane that when you say, oh, they were shackled by the system, it feels like they were, because they must have been being berated or told off when they were making what I guess were considered those mistakes, when in actuality, okay, we didn't have a lot of the ball today. I've seen people complain.
Do you know what, though?
See one person complain. I didn't care about not having it because we didn't need it.
What I've written down is the difference is that instead of being good in spells but holding the ball, we played for 90 minutes.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that we had the ball for 90 minutes, but we played. And we conceded 2, one of which I've watched back and was an unbelievable goal, just really well worked from Liverpool, the second goal, one of which a deflection off a defender caught McCarthy off guard. It was sort of all...
Yeah, it was 50-50 whether he should have actually gone for it.
I think he should have gone for it. And then he slipped over, and the rest is,
Well, the weather was pretty shocking, wasn't it? There was a couple of
Poundland
times that
Andy Carroll slipped in and scored a goal. So
he got very mad. He was rattled by that, and it was very funny.
yeah,
You didn't see the zooms in on his face, but we did. But yeah, it's just it is. I'm not saying it's a revelation, but like clearly, whether or not publicly they said they didn't believe in that anymore, watching them play with that freedom. And a lot of when their heads dropped a little bit after that first goal, you could see them falling back into those habits, and that was what were causing a lot more of the issues. But
but then we turned it round.
yeah,
Got back in and stuck
but
our head
that's
up,
the difference.
stuck our
And,
noses
and
in.
I think the mad stuff, the mad thing about it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as well. But like the whole after the 60th minute, when we're sat there in the sort of 85th, 89th minute, as we've spoken about before, and one of the problems with the Russel Martin system was that, well, we trying to keep calm, try and work the goal, and there was no intensity. But there was pressing, there was a real desire to try and peg back, Liverpool and actually get a second goal where previously we've seen them kind of try to work the ball up the system.
Poor Hanacho, an interception. Like it was mad.
It was beautiful seeing him back on the pitch, but my
Brent Brereton,
word, is he
has
not?
managed a shot on target. It's like the heavens have opened and we can play football again. It's crazy, and I don't think it's all Russell Martin's fault.
No.
I think a lot of it is, like I said, the pressurized container they were in, and partially the system. And there's always going to be a bounce from that relief, and hopefully that bounce continues into a more important game on Sunday.
Yeah, agreed.
And, did Liverpool play a rotated squad today? Yeah. Is their rotated squad still probably better than our first team on any given day? Yeah, probably. But we stuck in there and held our own, and we got a goal. And when I think the telling point for me is when the board was held up in the 90th minute that said 6 minutes stoppage time, we cheered. We had belief that we were going to score.
That was nuts, and like you could tell, just the atmosphere was different, and that
And we
is
probably should have had an opportunity to score with a red card, but a red card and a denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity. But even that can't bring my mood down. Like,
we'll talk about that in a bit. And it's funny because it's an argument for VAR, but also it's an argument for the fourth official using his eyes. But there we are. That takes us nicely into a little bit of a break, where we're going to hear from our partners at Zencaster.
yeah, so we here at the Global Sports Podcast Network spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencaster came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster.
So we're back. Greg. Well, for starters, I wanted to quickly talk about the yellow card that Flynn Downs got, because you brought up something that I was unaware of, because it really bothered me, because it seemed like a complete waste, and we don't need to rack up cards the way that we're racking up cards, and all he did really was sort of have a little scrap with Harvey Elliott for no reason.
I
didn't think he had the best game.
Elliott had hold of him the whole way, and it was probably reasonable to moan.
It was a bit of a hug from both of them, mate, and I think that's why they both got yellowed. But it was just a bit frustrating because he didn't have his best game. But you said that you saw him. You think he tweaked something?
Yeah. So actually, it was the first goal. He was out of position quite drastically and pulled up, holding his hamstring. And honestly, at that point, I thought he was going to go off. But we've seen it before with Flynn Downs. His, for better or for worse, his drive and want to continue through that. But he was lackluster after that, and he never really seemed to get going again. And I think it's because of that knock. And he probably should have come off earlier than he did. And I mean, let's hope it's that and not the change out of the system, I guess. But yeah, he definitely didn't look to be moving freely after pulling up with that at any point.
Indeed. Yeah. So that it's hope. I'm kind of in agreement. As I said, I think it's got to be. There's also probably got to be some apprehension for some of the players as well. For who keeps their place, what new system kind of gets introduced.
Some players have definitely earned their spot after tonight. Let's talk about Cameron Archer.
Oh, fantastic. That goal, mate. Oh, my goodness gracious
Yeah,
me.
the goal
He has
was
been coming for
unbelievable.
ages.
But not only was the goal unbelievable, right? He had a really difficult game tonight because the system that we were playing left him very isolated. And despite that, he kept going and going and going. And every time we moved the ball forward, even if it ended up going backward, he was making those defenders work. And you probably don't see that on the cameras, but I saw it sat behind the goal. And he just moves and doesn't stop moving. And he makes that movement, and the defenders struggle with it. And he just had a really good game. He really impressed me. And we missed it once he went off and Ohonachi came on.
Yeah, Ono actually played well, but it was one of those things where I think that you can tell he's not scored a goal in a hot minute because there's a couple of
your old son could have scored that tap in.
There have been times when I was younger and I would play football far more regularly than I ever play football now. I'm not very graceful, man, Greg. You're aware of that. That's very much the kind of thing that I would do, which is slide over when trying to kick the ball. And again, like I just think
there was
that
a beautiful moment where someone played a looping, but to be fair, like the conditions tonight, very
shocking.
grim,
So I
very
saw
windy,
a lot of people slipping over.
swirling wind, very difficult to play in. But someone played like a lofted ball up towards him, and as he turned back round to sort of scan it and see where it's going to land, it just hit him in the face.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure at one point it came off the back of his head at some point as well. But
yeah,
but no, but on top of that, we actually saw a Lallana on the pitch. That was a thing that happened tonight. They cracked him out of cryostasis. He's finally got a bit of a game, even if it was 10 minutes. I was hoping he'd get a full start, but yeah, I can't really fault the players tonight. Like again, like the Flynn Downs thing, I was worried that he'd been playing bad, but if he was carrying something, I'm not
let's
as
hope
worried.
that's all it was.
And
Yeah,
like,
I mean, there
let's
was
hope
definitely
that's all
something
that.
in it. But yeah, I think individually, I haven't really got a lot negatively to call out.
Which is nuts. Like
Ryan Manning was one of our best players consistently again, which is not a sentence I thought I'd say at the start of the season, but here we
no,
are.
not at all.
Matty Fernandez once again played
It's
out of his boot.
I love part of me, and now hear me out. Part of me is glad so much of the focus is on Tyler Dibbling.
Yeah,
And not as much of the focus is on Matty Fernandez, because I think that if people started to pay attention to him, then we would be in for we'll be in for a rough summer. Because
Dibling's an interesting one, right? Because he had an
hot
alright
and
game
cold.
tonight.
He didn't have a lot of.
But the problem, here's my analysis of him, is that he doesn't release the ball in any way quick enough. He tries to do one too many things with it, and which is fine sometimes. That gets him round a player, but sometimes I wish he'd make a pass a bit sooner, or even just whip a shot in or a cross in, just like half a second earlier than he does. He lost the ball quite a few times tonight in that same sort of way, but still, when he gets on the ball, his bravery, not a buzzword we're going to step away from usually, I guess, but his lack of fear and his willingness to drive forward drags the rest of the team with him. So although he does lose the ball sometimes, he still brings everyone up with him, and it's great. I mean, yeah. Otherwise, Nathan Wood again looked solid.
Yeah, played had a good
Howard
game.
Ellis seems to be enjoying his new role as cheerleader, was trying to G up the fans at every possible opportunity, and I love that. I'm all there for it.
Agreed. Bednarik had a solid game. I know that he was at fault probably for the first goal, but at the same time, three of the other times he'd done that, he managed to get rid of the ball.
Yeah,
and
I don't know how much you can blame that on him because
it's one of those things where like it could count as an individual fault.
I don't really blame McCarthy because it was an awkward deflection and it was awkwardly caught in the wind, and that was why he didn't really know whether to go for it or not. And then it carried further than it looked like it was going to initially. Well, I'd like the perfect view of this behind the goal from where I sit. So, but yeah, and he should have just gone for it, but he didn't go for it quick enough. And by the time he decided to go for it, he then ended up needing to backpedal because Darwin was coming onto it, and then he slipped up, and at that point he had no chance. I think McCarthy could have done better for the second goal. It looked like he dived in slow motion from where I was sat. But
like, I think if that's the two goals, it's not the same as what we've been seeing in
not
most
at all.
recent, where we've kicked the ball at an opposition player and they've struck and scored. And like those
Honestly,
are positives to take.
but
They're well
honestly,
worked goals. I don't care. Like,
but honestly, outside of those two goals, I can't really think of anything that I would call clear cut.
no.
And if we can hold oppositions to two clear cut chances a game, then we're right. We've got a chance.
Yeah,
What more can you
it's
ask for? Sulemana sort of looked a bit more interested to
he
be
had a
there.
couple of moments where he showed
He looked like a
the
player
quality
short
of.
on minutes who wants to get more.
Yeah, he had a couple of moments where he was doing the things that we signed him for back in the day, and
Which is
then
better
he had
than
a
we've
lot of it.
seen of him under Russel Martin, where he looked like a player who didn't want to be here. So,
But I think that's the thing, right? Is a lot of these players, if you're saying, as you said, it's a clean slate for everybody, I'm really hoping that's the case, because obviously whoever's coming in is going to have the tough job of the fact that we have a transfer window not 12 days away. Like, it's wild, because there will be players and there will be people that have decided, do we let Kyle Walker-Peters leave at the end of the season, or do we sell him in January? He wasn't involved tonight. I heard it was an injury from Sunday, but I don't know how. It's hard I don't want to speculate on something like that, but at the same time, considering Rusk all of yesterday said that there were no new injury concerns and confirmed Ramsdale wasn't playing, I didn't think that would be a thing.
difficult one, right? Because they had a day off yesterday, so who's to say how much information he actually had?
This
That's
is
what I
also
mean.
true.
Like, we weren't I wasn't personally particularly optimistic for the game because I just wasn't expecting much to have happened in 3 days, where one of them was a day off and one of them was a recovery day. Like,
Well, obviously, I was chatting on my lonesome yesterday, but part of me, that was kind of the thing I had, is that the day off was good and bad. It's the same thing. Whereas if you get bad news at work and you have time off that is away from work, that you can process it and go back in, happy days, and it's a bit more. It gives the players a bit more of a time, as opposed to finding out at 10 p.m. and immediately going into work the next day and
yeah.
then having to process that all as a group together.
But what
But
I'm not sure
likewise,
about is this uncertainty, right? Like, he said he wasn't sure, he hadn't been spoken to about Sunday yet. So is that the board thinking that we're going to have a manager in who's going to be ready to step in for Sunday?
I don't. I think that the problem is that the big fear that we had, it seems to be the case, which is they don't actually have a bit of a plan.
Mm.
And but the problem is their hand was forced. And if tonight is anything to go by, it was the correct decision. The only thing that I think a lot of people's arguments that are fair is maybe it should have happened earlier. And I understand why they wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But tonight there just seemed to be a bit of more freedom, and there seemed to be a bit more self-confidence and belief. And I watched what I would consider a full game of football. Even my wife sat down and watched with me and actually enjoyed some of the game, whereas usually it's just a ongoing joke that we lose every time. And she was like, wow, you scored an actual goal and it was a good goal. And like, that for me is a decent review of a game. Someone that doesn't watch football at all, who watched it tonight, sat with me and went, wow, it kept her attention for, I reckon, about 50% of it, which is
Just
significantly more than usual.
just the mood I've come home in, I think, speaks volumes. Like,
Yeah.
sure, we've lost, we're out of the cup. Do I particularly care that we're out of the cup?
No.
Well, it saves me the money of going to the semi-final.
Yeah,
Just for us
£100 at
to
that
get
point.
beat by someone else over two legs, probably. Um,
I was just
it's
happy it wasn't a drubbing, mate. That was what my
yeah.
big fear was. And I said yesterday, anything that is not a drubbing is a win. And the fact that I managed to
I
predict
had
it.
the entire section around me in stitches at 45 seconds because I went, oh, already better than Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing. The first drive of the game was to get it up, and
Yeah.
we've just not seen that. And obviously, the fact that even the commentary, mate, was taking the mick out of the fact that every single time the ball was kicked out, it was getting actual cheers.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't ironic cheering. This was the ball is being driven forward. You were looking at the stats for sort of halfway through the second half, and like Liverpool had one shot and one touch in our that part of the game, and we'd had like two or three. It was nuts, and we will speak a little bit more. We'll look to what's coming next after a message from our partners at Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. So yeah, ultimately, off the back of it, it's positive, and it turns out all we needed to do was not have a manager apparently to improve those results. And I again, that it might not be the same at the weekend. The actual pressure of points and it not being sort of a cup that we're not as bothered by might change things. We might have cameos. Couple of cameos today, as I said, where Sugawara helped pretty much assist that first goal, and he played really, really well after coming on as well. Felt bad for Bree, who's clearly just not had the minutes.
Well, he took a knock as well. He was carrying something. He went down injured in the first, start of the second half, and then was surprised he wasn't going off then. But
it's one of those things, mate, where it's just I don't know. I think there was a cathartic release for the players and the fans and everyone that turned up. And the problem is that my worry is that they're Sports Republic guys. You saw the CEO and everybody was in attendance, and it's one of those things where they're all going to be patting themselves on the back saying it's the right decision, and it's like, that's great, but it's really, really what comes next. And obviously we play Fulham at the weekend. Fulham, a team that have good form, are pretty much everything that we would have wanted to be as a team that came back down from the Championship and back up despite our extremely long tenure in the Premier League beforehand. That's going to be the real test, and the worry is we don't know who's going to be. I struggle to keep up with who the next manager is going to be. Everyone keeps saying Danny Roll, and then we've had Carlos Cordoban, and
that Danish bloke whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce.
But those are sort of the front runners. But then we're also starting to see left field picks. I think everybody's calmed down on sort of the Moyes and Potter talk a little bit. They've kind of realised that's not happening.
Thrown into the mix, but I'm pretty sure he said no last time, so I don't see why he would come in now.
Depends how much money's on the table. But this is the thing: it's the what comes next. But as much as I consistently have a fear of the future, and all humans have a fear of change, tonight was a positive. Tonight there was a goal, there was movement, there were players who looked like they knew how to play football, and players who weren't just scared of playing a system that, if they made an error, would result in us losing. Because that is, the mentality needs some work. Maybe we'll have a coach that's a bit more.
There's plenty of bits that need work. It is definitely. I mean, we still lost, but
I'm not bothered.
Forward progress, and
I am more.
And that's all we really want. Is we don't want to be shackled by a system. We just want a little bit of dynamic in the team, a little bit more pragmatic, just a little bit more flex, a plan A and a plan B. I don't think anyone's under any illusions. I think some games are going to be ugly. And, some games we might end up parking the bus a bit and playing that ugly football to grind out a point. I don't think we want to see that every game. But I don't think anyone's going to moan if occasionally that's what's necessary, right? We still want to have an identity of playing football. We're not going to stop. We saw it tonight. They were still passing it around the back and knocking it sideways a bit, but much less. And it was more meaningful when we did, because it was actually recycling the ball to move it forward again, instead of just Harwood Bellis and Jan Bednarek racking up the record for most passes when they knock it a yard between each other, right?
I was quite happy to see the possession stats, if I'm totally honest, because it showed we put a game in, because the possession stats were low, but the shots and the on targets were significantly higher.
Yeah.
And I just, as I said, it's...
Wow, it says Liverpool had 14 shots. I don't remember that. 4 of them on target, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to remember a couple of times, mate, they absolutely skied it.
I mean, look, we're not the most statistically and analytical and driven podcast, right?
No.
But bearing in mind we had probably half the possession we would normally expect to see in a game like this from us. We were basically equal on touches inside the box. like, I think 14 might be one of our highest touches inside of the box of the season. So it's crazy.
As I
It's
said, like,
it's just
for
a difference
me,
in approach and attitude that's really shown through. But that's what I was saying, right? Because to have been signed at this level, you know how to play a bit of ball. You know how to play football. You don't just forget how to do that. Like,
you're not
maybe
wrong.
Paul Often-Atchew's the exception that proves that rule. But,
I,
like,
the problem is with it would be nice to see him score. When he scores, I'll feel a lot better, because
I
he was
just
able
never
to do it in
want
the
to be
Turkish league.
told that
But
he's the answer to all of our problems and scores goals wherever he goes ever again.
who cares if it means that the fans are slightly happier and it gets an
He does,
atmosphere
look,
going?
to be fair,
That's all that matters.
positive impact when he came on,
Worth it.
and he made an interception. And the first thing he did was make a tackle off the press and run through on goal. And then he looked like a lost child. What do I do now? Like,
And that's when he would pass it to Archer if they
yeah,
played them together. Where we
right.
keep getting messages on
We've been
TikTok and
saying
all.
this
It's
so
so
long.
wrong. That needs to happen somewhere. But we'll have to see. But like, I guess where I want to end it today, mate, is that for once there's not a pessimist and an optimist. There's a game of football happened. No one knew what to expect. The lineup for me was like, oh, that's not as exciting. But the game turned out to be much more so.
Yeah.
And I think lots of players staked their claim. Lots of players proved a bit more of their worth. And I know that we lost, but I don't feel devastated by it. And I'm actually looking
The
forward
only
to the
downside I've
weekend.
got, mate, is that no one's going to be happy listening to this because we're happy.
You're right. Misery does love company and misery sells. But don't worry, it gives you that sort of, you get to enjoy, they're really happy. When they get battered like 5-0 by Fulham on the weekend, bring them right back to earth.
Right? That's
And
where
that is
Paul
where we'll
Arnott
leave
is
it,
going
mate.
to bid me the commentator's curse and score a hat trick.
Rightio. Well, mate, thank you for joining me so late in the evening,
Pleasure.
especially driving home in the dark. But apparently, you got home. You made quite good time. This isn't half as late as I expected to be
Yeah,
recording.
I have no idea what happened. I got in the car and there was no traffic in front of me. It was weird.
Madness. So, thank you everybody for listening. To all of our new listeners who have joined this journey after the Russel Martin era. Hopefully you can get to know us. And to all of our older listeners, thank you so much for sticking around and listening to two mates banter about their football club, a football club which causes severe pain to to support, but then you get a couple of moments a year which are pure ecstasy and joy. You can find us on all the social media: TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, everywhere else. Let us know what you think of the game. Let us know how you think we're doing. We really enjoy all of your feedback and we appreciate all of you. And with that, we'll be back tomorrow with a crossover for the Fulham game. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.